Hi, my name is Dominika Taylor and I'm a permanent makeup artist and trainer, and I will be showing you lip blush tutorial using True Lips Color from Even Flow and Zion S Machine from Microbrew. So now we have our client ready, we're going to start with the pre-drawing. I'm using a flat brush and concealer to create the shape and outline of the lips. I always start from the corners towards the Cupid's bow. I prefer to pre-draw just using the concealer and the flat brush because it allows me to create a much sharper edge. So I know when creating outline, I know exactly where the needle should land on the skin. Using the concealer also helps to show where the skin starts and where the lip tissue ends, as it brings up the visibility of little hairs around. I prefer to do this part when my client's laid down, and then when I'm finished, I'm going to sit her up and see if there's anything I need to correct shape-wise. But this allows me to hold my hand very still and be really accurate with where I'm going. Any mistakes that happened at this stage, I just make sure to wipe straight away. I always make sure that the Cupid's bow is not too pointed to create really nice and natural results. In this case, I'm going to keep it quite soft and round to make the lip look fuller. I always want to make sure that this pre-drawing is kept really neat and tidy. Okay, and now going back to the bottom lip, starting on the outside again, making sure that corners meet together, lip line, and I'm just following the natural, making sure that I'm not over the vermilion border. It's a little bit harder when the lip tissue is quite light, but this is why it's important to look out for the visible pores and hair. I always make sure that the brush is really flat, and I keep making it flat, just pressing it onto my glove. This way I'm able to create a really sharp line. And I'm always smudging the concealer downwards just to create more contrast, so the shape inside of the concealer stands out more. At this point, I'm just going to stand up and look right from the top and see how symmetrical my pre-drawing is. Any corrections can be done at this point before our client sits up. At this stage, I'm going to ask my client to smile. Could you smile with your lips closed, please? I can see if the bottom line is straight. And relax. Just making sure that the shape is nice and even. I've made any alterations to the left side of the Cupid's bow, I always make sure to balance it out on the right side as well. So the next step will be to set the pre-drawing with loose powder. I'm going to be using translucent powder just to set that concealer in one place so it doesn't smudge when I proceed to the treatment. So now we're going to start with the procedure. I'm going to be using a Tina Davis I Love Ink Pixel cartridge. I'm going for 1RL 0.30. I always start from the outer corner going towards me, making sure I stay on the lip, not going onto the concealer. This is the most important part of the lip blush treatment, so I'm making sure that I'm not rushing. I just do a little bit, and then I'm going to check how the pigment is going in. Always wipe downwards instead of upwards, so I'm not rubbing the concealer into the open lip. And as you can see, we're getting the outline in nicely. Again, I'm going to stop now and check section by section. This way I'm making sure that I'm not missing any outline. I'm just going to test if the needle is the right length and if the pigment is flowing correctly. To make sure that the outline isn't too thick and too visible, I just stroke the surface and create a line this way instead of staying in the skin. And this way I'm going to achieve very soft and easy to blend outline. A good indicator of the right depth when you're tattooing the lip is vibration in your stretching fingers. So if you can't feel vibration in your stretching fingers, you are not going deep enough. I'm going back onto the section that I already have marked, and I'm going to overlap this section and continue with my outline. I'm going to move to the top outline. I'm going to start right in the corner, making sure I'm stretching and I'm positioning the lip in a straight line. It's very important to hold the lip down and make sure it's absolutely and completely immobile, just so we don't get any twitches. And again, we're going to do a little bit and check. I'm going to start with the top outline. I'm starting from the outer corner going towards myself, and I'm trying to position the lip in a straight line, stretch it so it's in a straight line. So when I'm stretching the lip, I'm going to position the lip so it folds into a straight line. This way it's going to be much easier to follow. I'm always working in very small sections and making sure everything goes in correctly. When outlining the Cupid's bow, I always make sure to go in a really small sections and slowly coming towards the Cupid's bow and going across here, going just below the pre-drawing and coming back here, I'm going to cross. This way we're going to make sure that the Cupid's bow is really nice and sharp. I always start on the outline, very slowly going upwards, using pendulum movement and making sure the skin is really stretched. And now I'm going to go back down. Skin on the lips is very vascular, so there is more chances of bleeding than on eyebrows. So now I'm going to start shading and filling lips with the color. I'm going to start from the outer corner. I always saturate corners first and then move on to the middle of the lip. I go over each corner 3 to 4 times, making sure they are nice and saturated. Now we're going to move to the other side. I always make sure that I place my needle on the 90 degrees to the skin and keep checking between each passes to make sure I'm not oversaturating the skin. Always starting on the outline, making sure it's nice. Sit here for a few strokes and keep moving in very, very gradually, making sure that I'm saturating all the surface. I prefer to work towards myself, so I'm going to go back into this corner and work this way. I'm going to overlap into the section that I have already saturated and very slowly moving from the outline, going closer to the middle of the lip, making sure that the speed and pressure is really, really consistent. Now I'm going to go back to the bottom. Now I'm going to start from the middle and slightly change direction of my movement, just so we're not getting a sharp edge inside the lip. And again, section by section, starting on the outline, overlapping into the section that I have already finished, and very slowly moving from the bottom line to the middle. I'm going to go back down. And then making sure I'm still staying on 90 degrees to the skin. Shading in here with a slight change of direction. And that's one section done. Halfway in, now I'm going to turn back down. Now move into the middle part of the lip and slightly change the direction. I find that working in segments like this gives me really, really consistently good healed results. I love working with 1RLs because you can create really subtle and sheer results. It's very important to keep your pressure really consistent and not oversaturate, because we are working with a very, very sharp needle. So you need to be really, really precise when it comes to pressure. I almost don't press at all. I'm just allowing the weight of the machine dictate the pressure. So I always make sure that I stretch the skin and hold it really firm. And now just imagine that you want to use the tip of this needle and sort of stroke on the top of the skin. Imagine that your machine is hanging off the ceiling and all you want to do with your hands is to guide it into like a pendulum movement. You need to be able to hold it quite loosely to allow it to swing. To make sure that you are implanting pigment into the right depth and to make sure that the lips will heal, that the color retention is right, you need to feel in your fingers, in your stretching fingers, for the vibration. If you can't feel vibration in your stretching fingers, the color will simply come out in the healing process. It's really important to change direction when you come to the middle section of the lip, just to make sure you're not creating like a harsh line. I'm trying to create about 70–80% of the saturation on my first pass to work ahead of the swelling. I don't want to have to do numerous passes when the lip is swollen, so I'm trying to get as much pigment in as I can on my first pass. So it's really important to overlap the sections. If we don't overlap, we will end up with gaps in between each section. So just how I'm doing this section now here, change direction on the top. Now I'm going back into the section that I have already finished, 50% into this section, and I'm creating a section right here now. First half, now go back down. If you know that your pressure is correct, that you are not causing too much trauma, if your client is not complaining about pain, basically if you know you're doing everything right and some bleeding happens, don't panic. Lips are very vascular, way more vascular than skin on the eyebrow, for example, so bleeding is quite normal. Just like I did on the bottom lip, I'm going to start from the corners, moving from the outline, using pendulum movement towards the inside of the lip and backwards. I'm going to repeat it 3 to 4 times and keep checking, making sure I'm not oversaturating this section. It's easy to oversaturate the corners because the skin's much thinner here. So I'm just going to continue filling in with the color and overlapping section by section, making sure that, and remembering that to change the direction as I come to the bottom, so we're not creating harsh lines. After we finish our first pass, we will probably have around 80% of the saturation already achieved. So going from there, I'm going to go back to the bottom lip, just cross-hatch the entire surface. By cross-hatching, I mean changing the direction. So basically we're going to be moving, still using pendulum movement, but instead of going parallel to the outline, we're going to go slightly on an angle. This will allow us to blend all the shading in and I'll make sure there is no gaps or inconsistency in coverage. Whenever you are wiping the pigment off, make sure to do it in one wipe, in one movement, not to go over it over and over again, because even just with wiping, you're creating more trauma to the area treated, especially on lips. The reason I always break up my sections in half and come back to it from the middle is because the angle of my machine will change when I'm here, and then it will change slightly when I'm here, just because I want to keep that 90 degrees angle at all times. If you are getting healed results where inside of the lip is looking much lighter, like the pigment didn't stay well, it's because the angle, when you come closer to the inside of the lip, the angle slips slightly. It's really, really important to go down and keep your movements very close to each other. So as you can see, I'm not going all the way down very quickly and then coming back up. I make sure that I stack my movements very close to each other. This is going to help me work ahead of the swelling, so I'm getting as much pigment in as possible before I cause trauma to the skin. Sometimes if you're working with really big lips, you might even have to break this movement into 3 sections just to ensure that you're keeping the 90 degrees angle at all times. While I'm here, and if I can see any gaps in the pigment, in the saturation, I'm just going to go over them quickly while I'm here before the lip swells up anymore. Especially when working with single needles, it's really important to lift the needle up at the end of the movement and come from out of the skin as well. So really make sure that instead of dragging in the skin, you swing in it, and the only contact you make is in the middle section of the movement. This way you're going to avoid creating patches and darker spots at the front of your block and back of your block. Make sure you always start your shading on the outline, because if you create a gap in between outline and shading, it's important to lose that gap later. So always start on the outline, sit there for a little bit, and gradually, very slowly, move down. So now I'm going back to the bottom lip and going from the outer corner towards me, because I prefer to work this way. I'm going to cross-hatch all the previous shading that I have created, and by cross-hatching I mean changing the direction of my movement. Instead of going parallel to the outline, I'm going to change the direction and move slightly on angle. This will help me to blend all the previous shading I've created. If you get majority of your saturation on your first pass, this movement is really, really quick. You almost want to just tidy up what you've already created on your first pass. With this movement, we will just make sure that the color is nice and even. Cross-hatching always helps to blend all the shading we have created already. This is because I'm making sure to work ahead of the swelling. I'm stretching. And with the pendulum movement, I'm not creating trauma to the skin. I'm going to now move back to the top lip and do the same here. So instead of going parallel, I'm going to move on a slight angle. So wherever I see lighter sections, I'm just going to go back and moving across, just blending it. We are now finished. I'm just going to clean my client's lip with Killer Beauty pink soap. Make sure we got all the pigment on the client's face, and that's it. Thank you so much for watching. For more information about training with me, follow the link in the description.